In our study in the Gospel of John, the wonderful Gospel of John, we are in chapter 21. This is verses 4 through 7, and we can give it the title, It's the Lord. After failing to catch any fish all night without the Lord, the 7 apostles have overwhelming success because they follow the instructions of the Lord Jesus, even without recognizing him. Chapter 21, verse 4. But when it was already early morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not know that it is Jesus. It's not clear why the disciples did not know that it is Jesus. Well, the verse does tell us it was still early in the morning. Maybe it was still a little dark. And according to verse 8, there was a distance of about 90 meters or 100 yards between the boat and the Lord Jesus. Well, that's a considerable distance to recognize someone, but we need to consider the idea that their experience was similar to the experience of the 2 men on the road to Emmaus, recorded in Luke 24:13 through 32. And just Luke 24:16 says, "But their eyes were hindered from recognizing him." Perhaps it was a similar situation. Perhaps their eyes in the boat were hindered from recognizing him. We don't know. Chapter 21, verse 5. So Jesus says to them, "Children, you haven't got anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." The grammar of this question indicates that the expected answer is no. You haven't got anything to eat? No. Their very short answer is understandable if we consider that they were 90 meters away and that they were discouraged. Only twice in the Gospel of John does the Lord address his disciples as children. The Greek word here is paideia. In chapter 13, verse 33, the Lord also calls them children, but he uses a different Greek word, teknion. Chapter 13, verse 33, remember, "Children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews that where I am going you cannot come, also now I say to you." He calls them children there and also here, but is a different Greek word. The noun translated anything to eat is prosphagion, and the Manual Greek Lexicon defines that as a relish or a dainty, especially cooked fish, to be eaten with bread. Chapter 21, verse 6. Now he said to them, "Cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and they were no longer strong enough to draw it because of the great number of the fish. Comparing the Greek text with this translation, the reader will notice that some English words have been supplied in order to make a better English sentence. Cast the net to the right side of the boat and you will find. We add the word some. So they cast, we add the word it, and they were no longer strong, we have the word enough, and they were no longer strong to draw it because of the great number of the fish. Sometimes Greek can just leave out words that are obvious, and in English we have to put them in there. We're not told why they accepted the suggestion of an unknown person standing on the shore 90 meters, 100 yards away, but they did what was suggested. Brown, the commentary writer Brown, makes the interesting observation that every single time Jesus' disciples caught fish in the 4 Gospels, they were helped by the Lord Jesus. An interesting observation. Chapter 21, verse 7. So that disciple whom Jesus loved says to Peter, "It is the Lord." So Simon Peter, hearing that it is the Lord, wrapped his outer garment around himself, for he was stripped down, and threw himself into the sea. There is no explanation of how it was that the disciple whom Jesus loved, well, we know that's John, by the way. There's no explanation of how John was the first to realize that it was the Lord standing on the shore, but somehow the reader doesn't find it surprising. He was, after all, the disciple whom Jesus loved. Nor does the reader find it surprising that Peter had to act, so that even though there was a net full of fish to haul in, he had to throw himself into the sea and swim to shore. Peter and John were both acting in accord with their personalities as we've come to know them in the Gospels. Note especially what they did when they arrived at the empty tomb back in John 20, verses 3 through 9. Very similar. Peter goes right into the tomb. John, he just looks in at first. Well, we understand those two men's personalities to some extent. Peter's behavior might seem a bit odd to us. Why would Peter put on more clothes and then jump into the sea? But it really isn't strange. The undergarments that he was wearing while working on the boat were perfectly acceptable for such work. Our lexicon BDAG has an entry on gumnos, the Greek word sometimes meaning naked or stripped down. And it includes a reference to a text that says, the sailor wears only an undergarment while at work. So Peter was stripped down. It could be translated Peter was naked, but come on. He was stripped down to the minimum amount of clothing he could wear because there was work to do in this boat far away from everybody. But leaving the boat and going to see the Lord, he of course wanted to wear more appropriate attire. The word translated stripped down is gumnos. And again, it can mean naked, but this word can also mean lightly clothed or that person is only wearing undergarments. Peter threw himself into the sea. The word thalassa used here usually means sea, but it sometimes can be used regarding the Sea of Galilee, which is fresh water, as in this verse. Likewise, the Hebrew word yam, which usually means sea, can also be used regarding the Sea of Galilee, as in Numbers 34, verse 11. You know that generally in English, a sea is a body of salt water and a lake is a body of fresh water. But those are the rules in English, and the Greek and Hebrew don't follow the English rules. So chapter 21, verses 4 through 7, a summary. After failing to catch any fish all night without the Lord, the 7 apostles have overwhelming success because they follow the instructions of the Lord Jesus, even without recognizing him.